Natsia managed to pick up some sewing from an embroidery shop down in the market, next to the tailor who made custom-fitted shalwar suits. The shopkeeper sold dupattas and an array of lace and trim. He received numerous requests to sew the trim directly onto the dupattas, and he met the demand by operating sewing machines in his shop to keep up with the orders. But other ladies often came in with their own clothes asking for size alterations, rips to be repaired, and lace to be added. The shopkeeper had been impressed with Natsia's initiative and had been pleased to offer to pay her a small fee for the work she took home and brought back the next day. It wasn't long before he began relying on her punctual appearance every afternoon before tea time to pick up some work and then deliver the finished garments the following day before midday prayers. Natsia was careful not to spend the money she earned from the sewing on anything, and even Amma didn't ask her about it. Slowly but surely, the money she stashed in a rusty container beneath a pile of old newspapers was growing. One day, Seema held a dinner party for the Sahib's friends and business associates. The Sahib had expanded the guest list without telling the Mem Sahib, so Seema spent the day tiring out Shirzad, Natsia, Amma, and even Isha as they washed, cleaned, mopped, dusted, and ran to the market to buy the last-minute items such as yogurt and milk. Shirzad had been sick all day with a high fever, and yet he managed to run the grass cutter and trim the bushes before collapsing in his room after lunch. While he slept, Natsia covered for him and did the remainder of the work herself. The Mem Sahib had been upset that Shirzad had fallen ill on the day of an important party, but Natsia insisted that she'd do his work. There's plenty of work to go around, the Mem Sahib had replied, and insisted that Shirzad be prepared to work again once the party got under way. At 9:30, the Kabarnama evening news ended, and the guests began to trickle in. The chicken tikka, meatball korma, lamb and rice biryani, and potato and cauliflower sauté were all ready. Only the garnishing and the yogurt raita remained. Natsia stood at the island in the kitchen and diced onions and cilantro to mix into the yogurt. The Sahib hobbled into the kitchen. "Where is everyone? Doesn't anyone hear the buzzer?" Seema began pulling out serving bowls from the cupboard. "I'm sure Shirzad is around here somewhere. I thought he was in the back bringing out the chairs, or maybe he's at the market. I gave him money to buy bread. He should be at the gate. We can't have the guests standing out on the street waiting." Seema set the bowls on the island and began wiping out the dust with a damp cloth. "Natsia, get the door. Leave the latch open so guests can enter on their own, then go look for Shirzad." She glanced at the Sahib. "Good enough? What's the point of having so many servants if there's none when you need them?" He stamped his cane on the floor. Natsia scooped the diced onions into the bowl of yogurt and then quickly washed her hands at the sink while she listened to the exchange. "Where's Selim?" Seema asked her husband. "Didn't Natsia's father come back with you?" "We just had a shipment of supplies and the chowkidar had to leave, so I asked Selim to stay and guard the materials." "Couldn't you have asked someone else? You knew about this party. It would help to have him here tonight." "His entire family is here. The boy is here. How many servants could you possibly need for the party?" "Shirzad is ill today. Even if Natsia finds him, I'm not sure he'll be of much use tonight." The buzzer sounded long and hard, interrupting their argument. They both turned to Natsia. "Are you still here?" shouted Seema. Natsia pushed open the kitchen door and dashed down the steps. She ran barefoot around the house and down the driveway to unlatch the gate, then stepped aside to let the guests in. A tall man dressed in trousers brushed past her, followed by a thin woman who gave Natsia a haughty look. They spat out words at her, but Natsia didn't understand them. She realized they were speaking in English. Natsia ducked her head, apologizing in Urdu, as they marched toward the house where the Sahib stood, holding open the front door. For the next few minutes a steady stream of finely dressed guests passed through the gates. Their cars lined the street, and the drivers gathered outside the street, chatting and milling about while their passengers were entertained. Natsia waited for a lull in the line of people that trickled through, and then peeped inside Shirzad's room to check on him. He was curled up on the charpai, his eyes closed and his arms wrapped around his stomach. "Shirzad?" The boy didn't move, but a low moan escaped his lips. She called his name again as she stepped into the dank quarters. He moaned, the guttural sound sending a chill down her spine. She touched his arm, then recoiled, alarmed by his burning hot skin. "Shirzad, you have a fever." She touched his forehead with the palm of her hand. You must get to the doctor. He tried to speak, but his lips were parched. Should I get Bajie? He licked his lips. No, Shirzad mumbled. Just sleep. Natia could hear the sounds of more guests coming through the iron gate, their laughter loud and high-pitched. The party was in full swing, and Natia knew she had to get back to help Seema in the kitchen. Let me get Amma. Maybe she can help you. When the boy didn't reply, Natia tucked the flimsy blanket that lay at the foot of the charpai around his frail body. I'll be right back, she promised. She ran back to the bustling kitchen. Amma was at the counter pouring ice-cold water into glasses on a tray. Seema was ladling food into the serving dishes, and a number of guests were milling about, watching. Bajie, Natia began. Shirzad is. Seema whirled around about, her face pinched. Where have you been? I send you to open the gate and you completely disappear. Where's Shirzad? He's sick, Bajie. He's burning with fever. You tell him to go get the naan. He should have been back by now with the bread. Everything will be cold now if we wait for him. But Bajie, he can't move, Natia implored. Can't you ask one of the drivers to get it? Seema slapped Natia hard. Natia's hands flew to her stinging cheek, and she stumbled until her back hit the edge of the counter. She stared at the Mem Sahib, her eyes smarting. Amma held the water pitcher in mid-air. The guests went on talking, taking no notice of the incident. Don't you ever tell me how to run my house, Seema shot Amma a quick look, then turned back to Natia. You'd better teach your daughter to know her place, Nasim, or there will be no place for her here. Gee, Bajie, Amma mumbled. She's only worried about the boy. She'd better only worry about herself. Amma lowered her gaze and turned back to pouring water slowly into the remaining glasses. Go drag that boy from his room and bring him to me. Bajie, he can't move. Natia's voice trembled. Seema's face reddened as she threw off her apron, revealing a pale blue chiffon camise with silver beadwork glittering across the bodice. The delicate fabric swirled around her as she grabbed Natia's arm and dragged her out the side door. Natia bit back a yelp when she stubbed her bare toe as she stumbled back down the kitchen steps. Natia ran alongside Seema Bajie to keep from being dragged down the walk as they made their way to the front of the house. A lamp tied to an overhead electric line illuminated the lawn, where the chairs were set up to accommodate the men who preferred to stay outdoors. Every chair was taken, and many men stood in clumps laughing, their voices filling the air with a steady hum. Children ran, weaving around the bamboo chairs, their play spilling over into the driveway. Seema slowed, walking stiffly past the guests so as not to attract their attention. When she reached the small room beside the gate, she released Natia and strode in to find Shirzad sitting up, holding his head. Natia watched as the Mem Sahib grabbed the boy's thin wrists and yanked him from the charpai. Shirzad's eyes fluttered open. He stumbled and caught himself, then stepped onto the driveway, his body swaying slightly. Didn't I tell you to get the bread? Seema's voice was low and harsh. Where's the money I gave you? Answer me. She shook his shoulders. You could have at least given the money to one of the drivers to fetch the naan if you were so sick. Natia saw a few of the guests watching them casually. Shirzad mumbled something that only made the Mem Sahib more furious. Just give me the money back, you idiot. I'll send someone else. She tugged at Shirzad's shirt, trying to pull the wadded up rupees from his pocket. Shirzad moaned and suddenly doubled over to vomit. The vomit spewed all over the bottom of Seema's new shalwar. She screamed as the vomit fell onto her sandals and slipped between her toes. Natia grabbed Shirzad, bearing his weight as he slumped against her. He clung to her while she helped him back into his room and laid him on the bed. When she was sure he wouldn't be sick again, she grabbed his blanket and dashed outside to wipe up the putrid bile off the Bajie's clothes. Seema screamed again, this time gaining the attention of everyone in the yard. Natia could hear the gasps from the crowd, but all she could see was Bajie's red face and her bulging eyes. Get away from me! Natia stepped back before the Mem Sahib could strike her again. Seema stumbled back to the house while Natia stood in the driveway, unsure of what to do. Should she see if Shirzad was okay, or should she follow the Bajie? She knew that Seema would send someone's driver to get the bread, and that Shirzad's vomit proved that he really was sick. Nothing more would be expected of him tonight. He would be left alone to sleep in peace while the party raged on.